Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the barn door restoration. Last episode I turned the front frame into a pile of rusty parts. This episode I'm trying to make these rusty parts look a little nicer. So once I had the frame disassembled, I had to clean all the unwanted metal off these parts. The cross panel, I just had a bit of metal on each side of it. That was the remainder of the inner panel for the frame. It wasn't too bad to remove. This panel's in decent shape. It was bent. I straightened it mostly, but I'll finish straightening after I welded on it. There is a part where the floor structure brace welded in that it was burned through and buckled badly, and it's rusty on the back side. So I'm going to change a piece of metal there. And on this side there is some deep pitting, a couple pinholes. So the pedal support, I guess you call it that, this goes across between the frames, right through these holes, and the pedals mounted here and the park brake lever mounted on. This looked like it was really good shape. Once I started media blasting it, I noticed that there was a few seams that had swelled. So I'm going to cut the metal out on those spots and weld in new. What I've found so far is everywhere the seams were not swelled, there was no rust between them. Just a little bit of a dirty metal, basically. So they're really good. So I'm not worried about anywhere that the seams are still nice and close together. But everywhere they're swelled slightly, I need to cut those out to replace that, because that is rust in there that's caused the swelling. Now there's also some swelling here where this lever went on, but it turns out this lever's been bent over and pulled the metal up. This bracket is also rusty, so I'm going to have to make a new bracket. I can still reuse the parts that are on it, but the little bracket itself I'll replace. And when I do that, I'll cut this piece out and replace it. So the other end is quite rusty, and that's where the bracket for the steering box mounted into it and was welded. And it caused quite a bit of rust there, so I'm probably going to remove the bracket for the master cylinder and then replace this metal and then weld it all back after. It's almost to the point where I should rebuild it completely, but not quite. There's still quite a bit of good metal there. Now the frame rails, the biggest issue with those is where the side panels went on them. I cut across because the top I'm saving, but all the bottom area was quite rusty and I need to remove. Now that area was actually continuously welded around quite a bit, so that was a bit of a pain to clean that weld out of there. I still have a little bit to do, but I'll do that later. So with that off, we can see the support structure in here. So when I removed this piece, I cut on both sides, thinking that this is a hollow spot here, and that the structure was just welded to the outer frame rail. Well, turns out the structure has two sides to it, and one side was spot welded to the inner panel. So I ended up cutting into it. I mean, it's easy. I can just kind of build some weld in there and smooth it off, and it'd be good as new. So that was a little different. Turns out how it was actually built. The box under the front seat, the sides, they were assembled with this cross panel, rear cross member, the floor of that storage area. And then these support brackets were spot welded onto it. Then after that, the frame rails were put on, and then the frame rails were plug welded, 5 plug welds, through into this support. So I'm going to leave these plug welds on the back side, leave that all together. When I put this, the new side panel in, I will plug weld it in here. So it won't be quite correct, but once it's all assembled, you won't be able to see any of those plug welds anyway. So another thing with these apart, we can see the support that's added in here. So this section was spot welded into the frame rail. Earlier barn doors didn't have this. And this is added, I'm assuming they probably cracked or flexed here, and that was added in after. And also see the mount for the front beam. So it's 2 pieces of metal that were bent around 2 sleeves that are threaded inside. So when the beam went on, the bolts went in through and threaded into the two sleeves. So the left side frame rail is a little different. So it has a bulge up in here. That's actually for the clutch pedal. So the clutch pedal moves in this slot. Luckily, that bulge, the metal is still good, so I can cut that out of there and put it into my new metal. Because of the shape it is, it'd be kind of a pain to try and recreate that. So I'm happy about that. The whole top had to be replaced, of course. Now, this frame rail is actually in quite a bit worse shape than the right side, and I'll have to cut this inner structure and rebuild it also, along with the outer skin. And the curved bracket down here will have to be replaced, a piece of it. And after I removed all the unwanted metal, I media blasted them, which again, another tedious job, but they come out looking pretty good. The media blasting makes the good metal look really nice, but it also just shows up a lot of the imperfections and spots you didn't really notice until we blasted the dirt and rust out of. But overall, there's no surprises. That's what I expected to have. So the next step is actually going to be repairing these parts. So as we build in new pieces, fitting them and welding them. It's pretty simple. These two back corners, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to form those yet. I might try hammer forming it as all one piece. The easier way to do that is probably to build both edges, hammer form those, and then weld them to a flat piece on the face, smooth it all out. I'm going to try doing it as one piece first. So in the comments, somebody asked me what my background was. I realized I haven't really introduced myself, so I gotta take a minute to do that. So my name is Stan, and I live just outside of a small town of Yarmouth in the province of Nova Scotia in Canada, right on the Atlantic coast of Canada. When I was going to school in the 80s, I was doing collision repair, mechanics work, body work. In fact, I started using this frame straightener, I think in 87. So after I finished school in the early 90s, I went to work for a specialty vehicle manufacturer, and I'm still there today. At that time, it was just ambulances. Now it's fire trucks and command posts and other such things. So my day job is basically designing specialty vehicles, and creating the documentation and drawings to build it. So how I ended up with these parts in front of me. So around 1991, 92, out for a drive through some rural areas, and I spotted this real turd of a vehicle. It was ugly, had flat windows, a split windshield, it was beat up and rusted. And I thought, that's an amazing looking thing. I had to stop and look at it, and it was for sale. So I bought it, and I started to restore it. But then I ended up building a house, getting married, and doing all that stuff. So it got put in a barn for quite a few years. So in 2016, I think it was, I decided I either have to sell it or fix it. I'd do something. It was getting worth kind of a lot of money, and I didn't want it sitting there wasting away. So my family convinced me that I should restore it. Well, that was a great decision. It's been a lot of fun. It took 2 years to restore it, to paint, and then another year to get the camper interior in it. And then wife and I have traveled all over with it. We've been out through Quebec, Ontario. We've been down through New York State in the mountains, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Doing a lot of camping with it. It's great fun. So having a Volkswagen bus traveling around, we ended up meeting up with a lot of Volkswagen people, starting to do camp outs and that sort of thing. And that's when I got to see the barn door for the first time. And yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. So the guy that owned it was planning on doing something with it. And so I let him know. I said, look, that would be my absolute dream project. I would love to restore that. And so a few years passed. And I kind of given up actually ever getting it, but it was always a dream that maybe. And then one day I found out that he was considering selling it, that it was probably more of a project that he wanted to take on. And so the next day a deal was made, and I have a barn door. It was quite a surprise. So I guess that's about it for this episode. It's not terribly exciting, but there was a lot of labor involved in this little piece. Next episode, I'm actually going to start building parts and fitting them, possibly welding them on. So you can keep watching. There's some video of the work doing this, and there's a short bit of video of some of the details. So I guess that's about it. Well, thanks for watching.